Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a late night insight video on a Amouage. And if you've been following my channel, you know that I've been amassing these Opus collection samples, these library collection samples from the earlier ones that I don't have. I do have some full bottles. I have Silver Oud, I've got Opus 6, I've got Opus 9, I have Opus 11, but some of the holes, Allie was very kind to send me samples of some of the ones that I do not have in the collection. So I figured, since I think I pretty much have them all now, thanks to her generosity, we can go in order. So a couple weeks ago, or maybe more than a couple weeks ago, but within the last month or so, I reviewed Opus 1. So now we are moving on, surprise, surprise, to Opus 2. Now, Opus 2 is considered a woody fougere, okay? But this is unlike any fougere you've ever smelled because it's kind of done in the Amouage way, if you will. And Opus collections are, when Christopher Chong came up with the idea for the Opus collection, the library collection, if you will, and this one actually does focus on a library. It is recreating the smell of a library, okay? And so the idea of the Opus collection was that they were going to be unisex, because remember, back in the day, Amouage created masculine bottles that look like this, and they created feminine bottles that look like this. And they still create those bottles, but back then it was epic for man and epic for woman. Or, so they were specifically marked for each gender when they released them. The idea with the library collection is that they were supposed to be unisex, okay? And this is actually a very unisex fragrance to my nose. It does have some masculine elements, but it also has some feminine elements in here. And so we'll talk about all of those things. So the first thing is, this fragrance's opening is very, very interesting. It's an interesting take on a fougere, okay? Fougere is obviously a very vintage, classic style of perfumery, going back to the great fougere. Here, it's right here. I'll review this one of these days, but going back to Fougere Royale by Houbigant, came out with, basically invented the Fougere category, which was supposed to be, Fougere literally translates to fern-like, okay? And so the Fougere category is supposed to have an element of what would a fern smell like if a fern had a smell. Well, imagine a Middle Eastern house from Oman taking on this exercise. And that actually gets you pretty close to what you smell in Opus 2 here. Now, I've worn this to bed a couple times, and she very generously sent me one of the Opus 2 decants. It basically looks like this. This is an official branded sample. This is one of the older samples. It's interesting. There is a little bit of a correction I have to make, because originally I said if you go to the Amouage website, many of these, Opus 1, 2, 3, 4, they're not listed on the Amouage website anymore, but that's not true. They actually are still there, but they're not in the new bottles, if that makes sense. The new bottles started at Opus 5, and so they renamed that Wood Symphony. They skipped Opus 6. They went to Opus 7, which they renamed Reckless Leather, and they skipped a couple more, and so I'm not really sure what's going to happen with these that are still in the old bottle. If once the old stock sells out, they're discontinued. I don't know what's going on. But it is still technically on the Amouage website, so I was mistaken there. You just have to search for it. If you actually just go click on Collections and then click on Opus, the library collection, it won't show it. So keep that in mind. You literally have to search for it. And when you order decants of the new library collection, they only give you 6 decants, and it's the new ones that were created under the Fishman, Opus King Blue, Royal Tobacco, Silver Oud, and then there's Rose Incense, Reckless Leather, and Wood Symphony. And the rest of them have just been kind of relegated to the basement. Like, you have to look for them yourself. So you have to search for this, but it is still there. 230 pounds for 50 mil, 100 mils is 320, but I think you can find this discounted still in the older presentation as well. So let's talk a little bit about it. So one of the most interesting things about the opening here is that it feels very furry on my skin when it opens up. It feels very furry and very green, okay? This is actually a really beguiling scent. It's a scent that in the opening kind of captures the imagination a little bit for me. So there's 2 main notes that create this green aspect, and they come together. And this is a trend that happens over and over again with Opus 2. It seems like this is properly named, because it seems like there's two things that happen continuously with Opus II. So the first is that this bay leaf, which was so properly and successfully used in Jubilation 25 for Men, which I still owe a proper review to, but that's going to take some serious time. I can't just, wear it a couple times and do a review. I've been wearing that for years, and I'm not ready to do a review on that one yet. But one of these days, I will properly review Jubilation 25 for Man. But if you know that fragrance, you know that Bertrand Duchaufour made use of a brilliant note of bay leaf, okay? Or he calls it laurel in his note breakdown. But I think it's basically the same thing. Bay leaves and laurels are a technicality. They pretty much mean the same thing, to my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, they do. And they basically give this, bitter stew-like smell. So, of course, bay leaves are constantly used in stew, but I get this stew-like association, right? So it's like herbal, bitter smell, okay? And just think of the herbal side of kind of opening up a glass jar filled with a bunch of bay leaves inside of them and smelling it, right? It gives you a slight floral, slight citrus smell, sort of accents of florals and citrus, but mostly it just adds this weird, bitter kind of thyme-like smell. Think of the dry, sort of herbal, crunchiness of dry oregano. You can put it on pizza or something like that, right? And so this fuzzy quality comes from the cinnamon. And while I think there is a lot of cinnamon in the scent, I think the fuzzy quality, it's an important aspect to it, because the fuzzy quality slowly starts shifting to kind of a creamy and slightly powdery quality. Now, historically, lavender is slightly powdery. There is a little bit of a powdery aspect to the lavender here, but I feel like maybe there's some missing ingredients in this scent, and I think there's a couple of them, but one of them is potentially iris, because that furriness, I called it fuzzy, but it could also be construed as furry. It could also be construed as powdery, but sometimes iris sort of gives that feel. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of iris used here that's not listed in the note listing, because it gives a little bit of that, it starts sort of morphing into that. But stick with the fuzzy idea for a little bit, okay? The cinnamon sort of adds a little bit of that fuzziness. Imagine like powdered, cinnamon being thrown on something. And, but what's very important in the opening is the second star of the green opening to this fragrance. So I talked about the bay leaf. The second star of the show here is a note called Absinthe. Now, I've actually purchased Absinthe from the store when I was younger, and I was like, what the hell, I gotta try this. In my early 20s, you could buy it, and I'm sure it's not the real thing, but it's an anise heavy liqueur, basically, is what Absinthe is, and it's an accord that can be created by perfumers, and usually they'll use things like fennel, artemisia, also known as wormwood, or star anise or something like that, and create this absinthe-like, blend, right? So this green opening smells, imagine that brittle, dry, sort of crinkly feel of a bay leaf that was left out, right? Not sealed properly, not put in a Ziploc bag, not put in a jar. You just kind of left the bay leaf out and forgot about it, and you find it a couple weeks later and it's brittle and crinkly and dry, right? So imagine that bitter, crinkly feel of a bay leaf that wasn't properly sealed, contrasted with this green, very effervescent, almost herbal-like smell of this green liqueur, all right? And the green liqueur, of course, is flavored with anise. Now, I didn't actually do research to check if my memory is true, but I believe that when you drink absinthe, you're supposed to sweeten it somehow. I remember reading a story about, I believe it was Edgar Allan Poe. Don't quote me on that. Could have been another famous writer, but I think it was Edgar Allan Poe who used to drink absinthe. And he would put sugar cubes. You'd put sugar cubes inside of the absinthe. And so just imagine this sort of weird, sweet, liqueured, anise, green, bitter, effervescent, slightly shocking in a way. Not shocking, but, whenever you take a shot, sometimes when you take a shot, you're like, it just kind of, hits you in the back of your throat kind of thing. It wakes you up, if you will. Not that you're asleep taking shots, but you know what I mean. And so just imagine this weird, strong opening contrasted with something that I would almost describe as designer-like. Slightly designer-like because it's lavender, it's pink pepper, okay? It's cinnamon, it's cardamom, and the cardamom really does start to come on. Of course, Middle Eastern fragrances love using cardamom, and I love cardamom. But the thing about it is that cardamom is a cool spice. And so this fragrance blends warm spices with cool spices, right? So just like I said in the opening, two main green spices, absinthe, well, bay leaf and absinthe make up the green opening. This fragrance blends sort of cool spices and warm spices together. And it basically takes outrageous and wearable, right? So two things again. Think of outrageous and wearable, and it just sort of blends them together. And what I really like about the fragrance is once the fragrance has a chance to cook and kind of really mature on your skin, this beautiful green incense starts to come forward, okay? And I say green because some of it feels like you're smelling fresh incense, like you're smelling fresh incense tears just picked off of the tree, right? After they've been given a chance to mature, the incense tears are harvested off of the trees, and just imagine smelling like that fresh incense tear. It smells very different from the incense when it's burned, right? And so again, this is Opus II, and so this is going to take both parts of the incense. It feels like you're smelling fresh green lemony incense. It almost smells slightly elemy in smell, and it smells like you're smelling an incense that is kind of I would say sort of slightly cooked, slightly burnt, but not overdone, where it still gives a chance for the lemony and fresher side of the incense to come through. And it's very well done, extremely well done, okay? I really like that green incense as it comes forward. And, you get a little bit of the smoked incense, you get a little bit of the fresh incense. So Opus II feels like a very apropos name, again, because it feels like there are two sides of many notes, or two notes that kind of combine to join an accord, or, taking something outrageous and taking something wearable and blending them together. Now, earlier I said the fragrance smells fuzzy, okay? And I just want you to imagine the fragrance becomes more and more powdery cinnamon as it continues to dry. Again, I think iris may be a little bit of the secret ingredient used to make it feel very posh and elegant, but that powdery nature of the fragrance starts to turn more and more creamy as the fragrance dries down, okay? So it goes from fuzzy, powdery, creamy. And interestingly enough, before I go any further, before I forget, the perfumer behind this was a 2010 release, is a lady named Michelle Sadamito. And I don't know very much of Michelle's work, but she did do a couple hit fragrances, I guess you could say. She made Godolphin by Parfums de Marly, which is sort of a take on Tuscan leather. I'll review it one of these days. And she made a fragrance for Javoy, which I have yet to smell, but I want to, called Ombre Premier. And Ombre Premier is a Javoy fragrance that is on my wish list. I still have yet to smell that one. And then, of course, she did this for Amouage. I think those were her big three fragrances that she did. But she has done some stuff going back to the 90s. She did some stuff for Gianfranco Ferré and other houses. And even up until a couple years ago, 2019, she made a fragrance. I don't know if she's still working or what, but she only has something like 24 perfumes in her whole Rolodex over, decades. So she's been around, but she doesn't have the biggest Rolodex of fragrances that she's created, but she's been around the block. And so back to Opus II, basically what ends up happening is, this is how I want you to sort of imagine all of these notes playing together. So imagine holding a shot of absinthe and pouring it into a pot, okay? And then adding this very creamy milk, maybe even some half and half to add a little more of that creaminess, okay? And then adding the spices in. So you add in the cardamom, you add in the pink pepper, you add in the bay leaves, okay? Of course, you have to have the bay leaves for the greenness, right? And sort of cooking it down, making it almost into like a gravy. Just imagine sort of, when you cook milk and it sort of can turn into that gravy-like creaminess in a pot. And sort of what you're left with, the derivative aspect of all of this work, is kind of how it smells on skin. It has this weird blend between like an oriental, because there is some amber and stuff in the base, and of course the frankincense and musk and stuff in the base you would expect from an Amouage, but it's kind of a fougere because of the lavender usage, but it doesn't have geranium, and it doesn't have oak moss. So it's not a proper fougere, but like I said, imagine a fougere done by someone from Oman, okay? They kind of have the rough sketch, but it's not a true proper fougere. And so the fragrance continues to dry, and as it dries more and more of this sort of woody patchouli smell starts to come to the forefront into the dry down, okay? The patchouli is somewhat prominent to my nose, and you get lots of cedar. It's almost like a cedar slash patchouli combination, right? Into the dry down, with slight hints of those amber and musks like I talked about earlier. So if you like the ouds that smell cleaner, like, for example, if you like the way Taha from the house of Agar Ora does his ouds, I would urge you to smell this, because even though there's no oud note listed, there is a little bit of this funky smell. You could be forgiven for thinking there is an oud note in here, even though there's not one listed, but a very clean take on it, right? Think of a spicy, woody fragrance, right? That could use a clean oud to create that sort of dry down, if you will. So again, no oud listed, but we already said it smelled like there was some iris earlier. There's no iris listed. There are some florals listed that I didn't touch on yet. And the reason I didn't touch on them is that they kind of seem in the background. They don't play peekaboo, but they really hide themselves behind all of the other mechanics of the rest of the notes to me. The rose and the jasmine, I think they're part of the blend, but they really never come out and play a prominent role, if that makes sense. But they're there to keep it unisex, okay? And so this fragrance is kind of a gender bender. That's the other thing, is it's kind of a genre bender, and it's kind of a gender bender. Kind of does both. And it's a pretty unique take on a fragrance, but at the same time, it's done in what feels like sort of a mass appealing way, if that makes sense. It's like a strange fragrance done in a mass appealing way. Because I don't think many mass appealing fragrances are going to use things like absinthe and bay leaf and have this weird take on a fougere with frankincense and all that stuff, right? Cardamom and so that's why I say it kind of gets overlooked by people, because I don't think, number one, they know where to place it. It's like, what do you do with this thing? You have this thing in your hand, and it doesn't really fit into any of the holes, It's not the same size pegs as the holes. Is it a fougere? Yes, but a weird one. Is it creative and artistic? Does it belong in the library collection? Yes, but it dries down very tame and wearable. And here, let me read you the quote from Amouage. They literally gave it one sentence. They put a lot of work into this one. Opus II is a majestic fougere, inspired by the refined and evocative atmosphere of a great library. What kind of library? A great library. So what are you thinking? Like the long-lost Library of Alexandria or something like that? So the dry down has this old book-like feel to me. There is definitely this old book-like smell, okay? So imagine like old smells of paper and woods, and imagine like dry paper turning yellow. It's so old, it's hundreds of years old, but the books are very elegantly bound because they're, of course, rare first editions, because this is the long-lost Library of Alexandria. And the other thing that I really think they missed out on is, what did scribes write on back in the day? They wrote on papyrus. And there is almost this weird, dark papyrus feel. I've talked about some fragrances that use papyrus. Javoy has one called Private Collection, I believe. I'm forgetting all of my Javoy Private Label. Private Label. So Javoy's Private Label is a brilliant papyrus fragrance. One of my all-time favorites. There's also a papyrus note in a Lalique, a flanker of a Lalique fragrance, which is called It is called Hommage à l'Homme Voyageur. So this is the Voyageur flanker of Hommage à l'Homme. This is discontinued. This is a Michel Almarac creation. Very interesting designer. Very interesting designer, for sure. I showed things like One Man Show Oud Edition the other day, earlier today maybe, when we were talking about one of the oud fragrances I reviewed. And so, you know, I've been talking about you know, these off the beaten path notes lately. I've been into things like these ouds and the you know, the Cypriol fragrances, but lately I've been on a little bit of an oud kick. And so this one doesn't have oud, but it has this feel of oud in the dry down that you could almost be mistaken for papyrus, because papyrus can be very dry, papery, right? Imagine this very dry, papery, and slightly smoky smell. And you get that into the dry down. It's woody, it's earthy, it's dry, it's spicy, it's, you know, all of those things. And so I think Amouage really missed out on an opportunity. This is the library collection, and this one is specifically the one that is supposed to smell like a great library. Not just any library, a great library. And they missed out on the papyrus note in the base. Or maybe it's in there. Maybe it's another one of those hidden notes that they just didn't list. Either way, think of old boxes, old books, old cardboard. Maybe beat gets wet and you know, maybe there's like a leak in the roof and there's some like drips on the book. It gives that feel, right? In, you know, paper boxes, cardboard, and enclosed spaces for a long time, right? There's no air coming in and out, right? And whenever you enter the room, it's like a slightly musty smell, like an old smell, ancient smell, but of the paper and the books and all that stuff. And it's mixed with the cinnamon, and the cinnamon never really goes away. Neither does that iris smell, but it dries more and more into the woody patchouli, you know, type feel. And it dries down very wearable, very, very wearable. I would have no problem wearing this out and about. It's not one of the crazy Amouages. In fact, if you like fragrances like this, I'm going to review this soon. This is Costume National Homme. This doesn't say it, but this is actually the Pure Parfum version that came out a couple years ago, 2020, 3 years ago. And so if you like these type of perfumes, Costume National Homme is actually sort of a designer take on this scent, I would say, because Costume National Homme Parfum came out in 2020. It's got cardamom, it's got cinnamon, it's got patchouli, it's got musk, it's got woods, but it has sandalwood instead of cedarwood. But the difference is this uses more like labdanum, which I love. I love labdanum. And this doesn't have the very interesting, strange opening, and it doesn't have the frankincense, okay? But if you wanted kind of a designer alternative, Costume National Homme, definitely you could go, you know, in the spicy, woody category. That could be a replacement for Opus II. So, for a late night insight quick hit video, I think I covered it pretty extensively. I would say this is another good Amouage. I mean, it's if money was no issue, I would own the whole library collection. But for now, I'm going to have to just appreciate just getting to know it and wear it and discuss it for you guys. If you've smelled Opus II, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are. Again, thank you, Allie, for very kindly sending me this sample. I've enjoyed getting to wear it a couple times, and I love doing these reviews for you guys. So let me know what you think. If you have any experience with Opus II, leave a comment. If you have experience with the Amouage library collection, let me know what you think about the library collection being, you know, reduced to whatever is happening. I don't know what's going on there. The fact that you have to kind of individually search for it, it's not actually listed under the collections, is strange, very strange. But so anyways, let me know what your thoughts are. Love seeing your faces in the comments. Love hearing your thoughts and sharing feedback with each other. It's part of my it's one of my favorite things to do. with the channel. I love the back and forth interaction with you guys. So leave a comment. Let me know you were here. Let me know what you think. Cheers. And I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.